But with that, I'm going to bring up the agenda that Stephanie and the team helped put together. And as I'm doing that, Stephanie, can you just help describe a little bit of the code lead situation we're in for this meeting, just so folks kind of understand why the district's running the meeting today?
Yeah, sure, Jess. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and I work at the Air District in the Community Strategies and Resources Department. And just to kind of keep everyone informed and just want to keep this process transparent, our previous co-lead, who I think many of you know, Nate, he actually just recently took up a new position outside of AB 617 and does no longer have capacity to kind of co-lead this meeting. And so for at least today's meeting, the district will be leading it. If there's any folks in this group that are interested in potentially stepping into that co-lead role, we're totally open to working with anybody in this subcommittee and CSC. Just let us know. But for today, the district will be supporting the meeting.
And with that, we'll make the same announcement tomorrow as well at the main CSC meeting with a bunch of other folks available. So thanks, Steph. Any questions from anyone before we get started as to what we just described? And for even Nate Knott is now the transportation director at Stockton Unified. I think a few of us know that from other subcommittee meetings and other things we've been on with him. So we're really excited. We get to keep working with him just in a different capacity. It was Samir Sheikh, our executive director's birthday last week. So there might be several dozens of people walking by on their way to get cake. So don't mind them. All right, I'm going to pull up, Stephanie just posted it. I'm going to quickly share my screen to review a couple of things that we're going to go over today. I think we certainly have a time for maybe quick introductions since there's a small group of us today. I did want to preview, just so that folks know it's top of mind, something we want to have in our next meeting. We're going to call it a November meeting, but we'll work with folks to schedule the next meeting to maybe see if there's more participation, maybe if we doodle a handful of folks. And that's the truck reroute study. So I'll talk about that here in a second. We also want to talk about the heavy duty truck incentives measures, in particular for some of the small truckers. We brought this up a little bit at our enforcement meeting. And definitely want to talk a little bit about that. And then of course, wrap up the next steps. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and just maybe quickly, we can just popcorn to each other. So I'll start quick introductions, more just for the recording purposes. I'm Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources at the Air District, and I'll pop it over to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and I'm a Senior Air Quality Specialist in the Community Strategies and Resources Department, which oversees the implementation of AB 617. With that, I'll pass it to Eric.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Sauls. I'm also in the Community Strategies and Resources team. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Janine.
Thank you, Eric. Janine Tackett, Supervising Air Quality Specialist in the Grants Department. The programs that I work with are on-road heavy duty truck programs and air filtration, and I'll pass it to Brian.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Dodds. I'm a program manager in our Grants and Incentives Department, and I deal with a variety of programs, including trucks. So happy to be here with you today, and I'll pass it over to Scott.
Hi, good afternoon. Scott Wall with the California Air Resources Board, and I am assigned as the Stockton AB 617 community lead for the community of Stockton as one of my communities. And so happy to be here. And I will pass it over to Pandora.
Hello, Pandora Crowder, President, Conway Home Resident Council, and a resident in South Stockton. And then I'm on my phone, I can't see who's left.
I think we have Cynthia.
Sorry, I lost my mute button. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, she, her, hers with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. Great to see you all and hear you all.
And then I missed it. I don't know if we've done. Oh, there we go. Thanks.
I think the last one, Eric Bissinger with a card in the Enforcement Division for Community Outreach. Hello.
And then I know we do have Lori and Mark. I don't know if they want to introduce themselves. They are an important part of this meeting.
Hello, everyone. Mark, interpreter with NorCal Services for the Deaf. Hello, everyone. I'm Lori, NorCal interpreter for the deaf, of course.
Great. Thank you all for being here. And as I mentioned, we're happy to, keep it free flowing, and because of the small group, and I appreciate kind of the flexibility today. And like I said, moving forward, we might want to kind of reestablish and do a doodle poll to see not only co-lead opportunities, but also maybe a better date or time that works for folks. I know this is actually a topic many are interested in. So we don't take this light attendance as light interest, if that makes sense to you. So really briefly, I'll just kick it off to the preview for the next meeting we want to have. And like I said, we'll work to make sure the schedule is open so many folks can attend. Is that we, one of our measures is to do a truck reroute study. As we were establishing that measure, the Port of Stockton had just established that they were also going to do a truck reroute study, and much of the measure that was included in our SERP was about truck routes in and around the Port of Stockton. So we're really fortunate that Port not only had that measure on their end. Sorry, there's happy birthdays happening. So all right, yay, okay. So, oh, hi Nate, good to see you. So not only was that, not only is that great that they already had, established that, but it's really great because they established that study and got it underway really early. And so for those of you that have been involved in the Port Outreach Committee meetings, which is separate from 617, but certainly a similar outreach effort to community groups, you might have heard or you might know that they are actually done with sort of the data collecting phase, and I think are very close to done with the data analysis phase of that study. And what I heard from those of you that were attended in our enforcement and regulatory subcommittee a couple of weeks ago, much of the conversation, especially in a lot of the pictures and a lot of the discussions from CARB and the community members that were a part of that effort, was not only about the truck emissions themselves, but particularly about the truck routes and whether folks were taking the proper truck route, whether rerouting needed to occur. So I think it's just so perfect that this study is sort of culminating, and we would really like to bring the actual contractor who did this study to our next subcommittee meeting and really make that the highlight of the meeting. And I'm wondering if we could use sort of the last couple of points of that CARB presentation from the enforcement subcommittee meeting as sort of the lead-in for the importance of that truck route study, and then really kick it off to the port contractor to describe it, and then to all of you to ask all the tough questions and really talk about what next steps are. The reason we want to bring it up with you, not only is it important and we'd like to get folks really engaged, but it's also because we do have incentives funding in that measure. And because we would no longer need it to do a study, one of the things we've talked with some county and city folks that are on our CSC about is maybe we can use that funding to reroute the trucks. Eric mentioned in his presentation at the subcommittee that some of the signage was just missing or literally upside down, or maybe not properly, like didn't make a lot of sense and folks weren't using it because it wasn't strong enough. So really partnering with the city and the county to use the incentives funding to take the next step now that we know what truck routes should be used based on the study that's happening. So that's just sort of sort of a preview. I don't know if any of you all have questions that might help us prep for that meeting, or any other comments or thoughts about truck routing that, again, that could help us set that meeting up. I think now might be a good time to talk about that. That way, if you have questions now, we can get it to some of those folks ahead of time and really be well prepared for that meeting. Again, I think a lot of you are involved in that Port Outreach Committee meetings, so you might already be up to speed. Maybe I can get, just because cameras are off, can I get like some thumbs up or something if it sounds good to have sort of the truck routes be the main component of the next meeting? See Pandora, thank you. I don't see any thumbs down. Maybe I can take that as a good sign. Awesome. Hi, Nate. Thumbs up. Oh, I see a physical thumbs up. Perfect. I'll take two. I'll take a real thumbs up and a virtual thumbs up. That sounds great to me. Well, awesome. Like I said, oh, thank you, Cynthia. Like I said, we will doodle, and in that doodle poll to everyone, and really in our update to the CSC tomorrow, we'll let everyone know that's the case, and maybe that can just drum up a lot of interest in the subcommittee meeting. So, and one of the best things about working with great people I work with is got a piece of birthday cake delivered to me. So thank you. Awesome. Well, that's really our first agenda item. We wanted to put that front and center because I know it was on a lot of people's minds, and we didn't want you to think that we were ignoring lots of the other measures, because the rest of the time we'd like to just kind of chat with you a little bit about truck replacement. So I'll just transition to just an open discussion, really. And again, just happy to take questions and comments and thoughts. If you recall, our last truck subcommittee meeting, Matt asked the question of us, and Brian Dodds, who's on the call today, answered the question in terms of what is available now. And the question was, can we pay for certain, like, how do we prioritize kind of small fleets that are having trouble coming into compliance with CARB's rule? And essentially the way that the funding works, at least the way the funding that's just kind of statewide that's available now that we intended to apply to 617 communities with just like a dedicated fund bucket and maybe some prioritization, is no. Like, you can't, well, you could help people out if they're close to being compliant and maybe their compliance state hasn't passed. But essentially, if folks are out of compliance with what's called the truck and bus regulation, or CARB's regulation, essentially, the way that the funding works right now is that we can't fund them, meaning we can't get them into a cleaner truck, even if that truck is cleaner than what they're supposed to be in, because the way that funding works. So we took that to heart, because I think Cynthia mentioned and Matt mentioned, and lots of folks talked to just about, like, that's not really hitting at the heart of what 617 is. We got together over here and talked a little bit about, I mean, it's 617, right? We can create project plans and we can do something outside of the realm or the norm of what we typically do, or even what CARB typically does, as long as we have the support from you all, get the support from CARB to do something special and something different. And so the thought that we had, and we did have a conversation with Matt about, just because he was a good kind of partner in some of this enforcement effort as well, is let's see what we can do to work together with you all and try to create a project plan that we propose, and, you know, work hard to craft and propose and make sure it's equitable, that allows us to fund truckers, small fleets, probably maybe even like one-off, you know, trucks here and there, to get into compliance, essentially pay for compliance. So that's kind of the proposal on the table. There's definitely details to be worked out, and what does that mean, and what are they eligible for, what kind of truck will they want to get into, I think are important concepts and important questions. I don't know if I'm missing like a high level concept, Janine or Brian, on just like what that would mean, and or if you have just details that might make it easier for folks to understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, we look at two different concepts within what you just mentioned. We look at the folks that are coming up to their compliance date, which is not too far away. And I just really don't think we can target that bucket, because it's a couple of months, and that time is going to be needed to draft the plan, get it through CARB, work through any questions and issues. And then the folks that are already past compliance. If they're already past compliance, they very likely will have already gotten rid of their truck, or will have it non-opt at best, because that's what the requirement would have been. It's not going to be registered. So, you know, that kind of puts a situation where we might be wanting to look at something similar to what the district has done in the past with what we call a fleet expansion, or a new purchase option, where money is provided for the purchase of the new vehicle, but isn't necessarily a replacement, as many of those people may have already been forced to get rid of their truck. So that's one thing to kind of think about. There could still be a lot of folks out there that have their trucks, they just can't register them. In that case, you know, crushing that truck is great, because then we know it's not going to be put back in service in another state or another country, bordering country. So a couple of things to kind of think about there. But the final compliance date for the regulation for everybody is the end of this year. January 1st marks the end of being able to operate an 09 and older truck. There are going to be some folks that will go to a low use extension, which means that they agree to only operate the truck 1,000 miles per year or less. That could be another group to target. Many folks that I've spoken to on the phone throughout the Valley are looking at that option just simply because they don't know what else to do, and it'll buy them a little bit of time to kind of sort things out and try to figure out what to do next. So that could be another angle to look at, is targeting folks that are on a low use exemption to help them get into a compliant vehicle that they could then operate at a more normal usage level for their business. Those are the thoughts I had.
I was gonna say, I wonder too, to answer your first question, and I know this is something Cynthia talked about the last meeting, of just like outreach about, technically our program is open right now, like is available right now. And I wonder if like starting like really aggressive outreach can really get us a sense. I don't know if there's like a survey that we could do as a part of the outreach, and just really get a sense if people are willing to be forthcoming about like, hey, are you still operating that truck that's out of like, because we don't want to get people in trouble or cite them for things that they shouldn't be doing, but also just try to get a sense of what is that breakdown, Janine? Like, did you get rid of your truck? If they did, what if they only have one truck? Does that mean they're no longer in business? Like, what is that realm?
Yeah.
Or that, that universe of people?
I think that's going to be a tough one, because you're right. You're asking somebody to openly admit if they're doing something illegal, because
Right.
if they've passed their compliance and they're still running their truck, then very high probability they're running it without DMV registration. So that's like two negatives on them.
Right.
I'm not sure we would get a lot of honest answers there. The folks that we have been talking to, we get a lot of phone calls, especially right now as CARB is rolling out notification letters. This is a standard process that CARB does usually a couple of months before compliance date hits, to just kind of give everybody that last final reminder, like, hey, here's what's coming up, here's some resources. So we do talk to a lot of the truckers. Oftentimes with the smaller fleets, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trucks, they may still have some that are of the 09 and older, and they're facing just parking them and running their other compliant trucks as much as they can, but it really puts a strain on their business, because then they have to cut routes. They might have to not accept new accounts because they just don't have the equipment to handle that. So there may be some small businesses that are not necessarily single owner operators, but small businesses that run heavy duty trucks as part of their business, that are really being forced to downsize because they can't afford to upgrade and keep the fleet number the same. That might be another great sector to kind of focus on, are the small businesses within the community that have delivery type trucks and other types of heavy duty trucks. The regulation does affect class 4 all the way up to class 8. So traditionally, I think when we have these conversations, we're thinking about that big truck, the class 8, the big rig that you see going down the highway, but it really does impact even your local delivery trucks. Food processing companies that are making deliveries, your local bakery that's doing deliveries. I mean, it can really cover a huge variety of businesses and smaller sized fleets within the community. And so that again is another area to look at. I mean, those impacts are direct to the community, not just because the truck owner lives in the community, but they're doing business in the community. They're trying to keep the economy strong within the community. So that might be another area to kind of focus on, is helping the fleets that are connected with the small businesses in the community. So we would be looking at probably slightly smaller trucks, 6 size, class 5 or 6, maybe even some 4s.
Yeah. I don't know if Pandora or Tanisha or Cynthia had any thoughts or just reactions.
I guess my only comment, my only thought would be just, I guess I worry about the small businesses. I worry about what a lot of this is how this is all gonna impact, not not just small businesses, but community as well. So
Right.
this is gonna be difficult to watch, I think, while everything's getting played out.
Yeah. So I think my question, I think to that point is like played out is I think the operative word, because to Janine's point, it's really 2 more months until some like kind of another group of folks are out of compliance. And I'm wondering, although to your point, Janine, there's not enough time, but like you couldn't order a truck today and get it in 2 months. So there's not even if we had them, like they were ready right now. So, and they would have to, it'd have to be ready into, it's not like you can tell like, the DMV registration, but my truck's on the way, like yeah. So part of me is wondering though, I wonder how many of those, even though to your point, we might not get a lot of folks, hopefully folks aren't, illegally driving trucks, but there might not be a lot of folks even forthcoming about parking and waiting, we might not get a lot of feedback there. But I wonder if we, to your point, if we send out, or if CARB sends out, maybe Eric knows this, letters to folks that compliance dates are coming up, is that a targeted, like we know how many trucks, and could we target specifically like, hey, we know there's these like 200 trucks in Stockton that are about to be like maybe that's who we reach out to, even though we can't get them before the end of the year. We can say, hey, we can try to help you. It'll be a little bit longer. It's going to be hard, but maybe this is some path forward.
I know, like when we did the license plate reader, so we sat and watched the trucks go by, and so we were able to collect all that data, and we can see which companies are there a lot, and we can see which ones are approaching this deadline. It's just the DMV data is very confidential, so it would take I might be able to give you an address, but not, it can only give you maybe one or two pieces of that list. But in regards to your other question, we could go through the truckers database and do the same, but I'm not super sure about the confidentiality on that. But
we have received, Eric, we have received in the past lists from CARB pulled from truckers for targeted outreach. We received that for the ag truck, the farmer ag truck program. That was the most recent one, and a few more years back, we received it for small fleets in the valley. No, excuse me, it was for VIP, so targeting small fleets, and then log truck. When we had the timber program through Moyer, we received some lists from CARB that were pulled from truckers that were either identified as being in the district, or in this case, we would dial it down specifically to the Stockton area. So hopefully what allowed us to get that information in the past might still be in place and available to us currently.
I mean, I think regardless of what we do with an upcoming, like with a change to project plan, I think having some plan of different types of outreach. I think we talked last time about, and I can pull up the notes. Sorry, I didn't bring them up earlier. But we talked last time about the dispatchers. I think you called jobbers. Is that what you called them? That's like the term for it. But dispatcher, like kind of other ways to like, partner and do some outreach. But I think this could be another one of like use the known universe of who's, who has what type of truck to do some outreach as well. Oh, please, Cynthia. Yes.
Yeah, I know you mentioned like wide outreach. Would it be possible to just like outreach to everybody and let them know if you're in compliance, like just forward this to somebody that you might know that is like struggling or has questions about it, just to cast a wide net and try to get folks talking amongst each other to be able to do some of that outreach for us. Even if they are in compliance, just be like, hey, if you know any of your trucking friends or any of your mechanic friends or anything like that, like outreach, let them know that this is happening, just to try to prevent some of that, trying to identify who's in compliance or who's out of compliance, just let everybody know, forward it if you're already in compliance.
Right. I think just so you, my thought was yes, first of all, yes, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. The compliance, non-compliance was just so we had an understanding as we draft the project plan of what really is out there and what is the need. And I think the reason being is that we've heard from you all, I mean, let's just taking a step back is there are big fleets that do drive diesel trucks in the community that we could probably target right now and like do a ton of truck changeover. And from one thing that we've heard from you all is maybe not completely, but we want to focus at least some of our efforts on the small guys, not necessarily the big guys. So this was sort of that balance of like, you know, maybe we do start to do that cast the wide net, let everyone know if you want an electric truck, you know, or, you know, 0.02, like whatever, the cleanest truck you can get, and you want it now, we have that funding available, knowing that the folks that maybe are able to do that might be some of those bigger fleets, but if they're in the port, let's get them an electric truck. At the same time, maybe we separately, you know, maybe we do, or I think it sounds like what we've heard is we still want to pursue a path where we amend or write a new project plan that allows us to fund the folks that aren't in compliance. So yeah, that outreach would be to understand kind of that universe of who those people are. But yes, I think to your point, Cynthia, I think just for the program alone, whether we amend it or not, I think we do need to cast a wide net. We do need to go out there. We do need to replace these as soon as we can. Go ahead, Pandora.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Cynthia. Sorry, maybe just to make sure I answered Cynthia's question, I'll go back to Cynthia.
Yeah, no, thanks. No, I think that makes sense. Would there be a way that if we cast that wide net and folks come in asking questions, maybe put any of like the bigger guys like on a waiting list, like let us get a few more inquiries from maybe the smaller fleets, local businesses before we get to you and your questions, put them on a like waiting list sort of, and let them know like if we get like 5 folks from a small business or local owned single operators, then we can get to you. Would that be something Valley Air could like help kind of to help sort some of those issues about the small and versus large fleets?
I mean, I wonder if we I know it's kind of an approach we've taken in other subcommittees, but I wonder if we, to your point, we just identify a target for small folk, like identify 5 or 10. I think the target for the whole SERP is 50 trucks. I don't have it in front of me. But maybe we identify like, okay, we want 10 of these to be, I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense, but like maybe we already say, okay, we're going to reserve this for that small fleet. That way we don't wait. The thought I have with waiting is how long does it take to get an electric truck delivered? Brian?
I mean, we're looking at probably a year, 2.5 years in most cases. Yeah, and one of the issues I think is that we just haven't seen a ton of demand, whether they're large fleets or small fleets at this point, for electric trucks. No. You know, they're brand new on the market. There's limited duty cycles that it'll really work for, and so it's not like they're beating down our door. I mean, part of the activities that we need to do as part of this measure, whether we focus on large fleets, small fleets, any of the fleets really, is just do outreach and connect with the folks that are able to make this transition in the near term, which really is 1 to probably 3 years or so. You know, generally that's been the larger fleets who can replace a portion of their fleet with electric or natural gas trucks, maybe not necessarily the entire fleet, but it's been, I think, difficult for the smaller fleets to date so far to really be able to embrace that technology and be able to put the financial incentives together to make it worthwhile. So I think that's a big portion of the challenge in implementing this measure, is going to be finding the right fleets. If we can cast sort of a wide enough net, so to speak, we may be able to find the fleets, whether they're in compliance or not in compliance, I suppose that that it would ultimately be willing to make the shift. And so getting connected through, you know, I think Matt's got some contacts with maybe fleets in the community or fleets that are operating in and out of the ports is probably a big kind of next step in trying to understand what their needs are and what their challenges might be in trying to, you know, go to the next generation of technology that's out there.
I'm maybe while others are thinking, and I appreciate Brian, that it's so, I think to Brian's point, a lot of things kind of need to happen simultaneously. Like we need to do outreach and really targeted outreach. And I think we got some good concepts last time, and we're gonna maybe kick off that effort soon. But at the same time, if we are gonna change the program a bit, I don't know if it makes sense. Brian, do you have a sense if, or maybe we can talk about this here. Does it make sense to like half the program can be as is and we do outreach now, and maybe half the program is what the new project plan will be? Because I also fear that we do outreach now and then we change the program, then we like roll it back a bit.
That would seem like a reasonable approach to me.
Right. And that was sort of what we the concept. I'm looking at our notes from last meeting. I'll actually drop in the notes in the chat so folks can follow along. Looking at the notes from last meeting, I do see we talked about reach out now, and then kind of do like like maybe half and half, and we still can, you know, pursue the other path of doing this sort of compliance, almost assistance, really. And through the outreach now, maybe we get some feedback on the realm of folks that will need that compliance assistance. And so you can kind of see that's maybe. So then maybe you kind of just mentioned it a little bit, but in terms, if I could help sort of describe for this committee some next steps in terms of what we're thinking. I think what we'd like to do as a district is come up with that project plan for like the compliance assistant plan of it, and bring that back, you know, and just kind of update the committee, get some feedback on it, and kind of maybe so we can use that to build sort of some support to take it to CARB. So that's kind of one piece I heard. The other piece is that if we do want to start outreach now, other than what you've just mentioned, Brian, and I think, like I said, the jobber dispatch might be a direct link. What I heard from Cynthia just now is reaching out to the contacts maybe we have, or the contacts we have from truckers, and using them as sort of like a phone tree to, hey, forward this to who you know. I think those are two great concepts. While we're in this meeting with this group of folks, are there any other thoughts that you'd like to share, or things that you'd like to offer while we kind of establish what this outreach might look like? Again, knowing we, you know, to Brian and Janine's earlier points, we do have connections. We have worked with some of the fleets in the area for other programs, but we're always open to doing more. I think port, you know, talking to Jeff makes sense, right? About like, hey, who's in and around the port.
I have a quick question. I know we've talked about a lot of different concepts today, but in dealing with some of the single owner operators, especially single owner operators, alternative technology is not often an option for them. The added cost of buying the equipment, the fueling challenges, would the community be wanting to still provide assistance to those owner operators to purchase new diesel, or are we firm on just alternative technology, low NOx CNG and electric?
That's a great point. So Janine, just so I can help. So knowing that, okay, so I'm a single owner operator, and you're telling me you'll offer me 200 grand to buy a $400,000 electric truck. Like, I mean, the fact that they haven't replaced their truck yet is maybe indicative of their ability to, you know, support that electric truck or pay an extra 200 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just, I mean, when we talk about single owner operators, financial capacity, you know, we're considering somebody who has one truck, they drive that truck, and that money is their income. So any extra costs, like fuel costs right now on diesel, are obviously sky high and are hurting them. But the cost for them to buy a compliant diesel truck versus a brand new electric truck are significantly different. And I think more so than what a current standard incentive can offset for them. The other challenge is that depending on what their financial status is like and what their credit is like, they may have a hard time getting a loan on a new technology of that type. I have received information from multiple dealerships that have indicated the lending companies are not jumping on providing great financing for alternative fuel, for new technology trucks without heavy down payments. So that might be another barrier or challenge that they will face, just that incremental cost difference between being able to buy technically a slightly used compliant diesel truck versus a zero emission truck. So just something to consider there.
And just so I can know what that would mean in terms of air quality, because I want to help put that, and then I see your hand, Eric. So either they're going to be, I guess, running their potentially non-compliant old diesel truck, go out of business because they can't run it anymore. Like, so the options are, I guess, illegally operate their old diesel truck, which is dirty, right? Go out of business because they can't operate it and they can't afford a new truck. Or we can get them into what's still way cleaner than the truck they operate. They aren't going out of business because they'll be compliant with the 2010 rule.
Yeah.
We know it's not natural gas and we know it's not electric, but it's really the only way that they'll take the incentive.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, it's still cleaner, obviously, than what they were currently driving.
I know sometimes we at like Air District level, just for some of the CSC members, we talk about, like, we call it surplus, and it's sort of the reason we don't normally pay for compliance, because we sort of already have on the books what we mean to get from rules and regulations. So in terms of surplus, it wouldn't be reductions. I mean, but in reality, it would be reductions, because otherwise it would be a dirtier truck.
And, you know, I mean, just kind of putting it in real world perspective, with some assistance, that single owner operator could potentially get a new diesel or a diesel truck that's a couple of years old versus what they might be able to afford, which would be a much older compliant truck. So when we talk compliant trucks, we're talking essentially a 2011 model year chassis or newer. Just like any other vehicle, as a vehicle ages, parts wear out, the emission control systems don't always perform at their intended highest levels. And so even though it's a compliant truck, it may not be running at optimal levels, and it could have or soon face a lot of expenses in repairs to keep it running correctly. So, you know, being able to help them get into something either new or just a couple of years old could potentially provide them with that compliance assistance that we've been discussing, as well as you know, the best available vehicle for them,
right,
within their budget.
And we would still work, like, it would still be like, you know, if you can, or we push electric or natural near zero, but possibly. Okay, so I just want to lay that out. I did see Eric's hand, but I saw you put it down. So do you mind if I go to Pandora? Did you have something to add? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I did accidentally put it down, but yeah, I mean, I know I'm not an incentive expert, but like I have a feeling the board might not go for you know, funding something that's non-compliant unless it goes above and beyond what the current regulation does, and that would probably just only be electric, I mean, zero emission or or EV, or ZEV might even work. Near zero might do it, but just a newer truck, I'm not sure they would go for that. That's just I can't speak for the board, but that's my initial thought on that. That they would probably want to see near zero or zero.
And just so you all know, just like this didn't have some of this conversation that we are having right now, we did have with some other CSC members as well, and echoed, I think, knowing to Eric's point, I think this isn't the first time we've heard from CARB that would be the case. So that definitely is something we need to keep in mind. To Eric's point, we do have to go through CARB to get the funding approved. And so it's something to keep in mind. All right, Pandora, you've been super patient. I appreciate it. And then Margot.
So my first comment that I was going to have previously was along the same lines, as far as can't we make sure that we give priority, not so much a wait list, but just knowing that, okay, as applications come in or whatever, give the priority to the smaller base, businesses. But then my question to what we're talking about right now is, honestly, how long can a newer compliant diesel stay in compliance before something else happens? So if you go that diesel route, does it really make sense? Because in another couple of years, they could become non-compliant, and then we're right back. Then they're right back at square one again.
That's a great question. Janine probably knows the answer.
So yeah, so there's currently not another regulation. However, we know how it goes. I mean, as we push into the future, there are other regulations coming onto play, such as for the electric vehicles in California. But there was another bill, I believe it was SB 1, that established a 13-year time frame before a vehicle could be subject to another replacement requirement. So CARB staff, if I'm getting that totally wrong, please jump in and correct me, but there is some legislation in place to kind of provide a period of time of cushion there for people changing out to compliant diesel trucks right now before any other future regulations could potentially force them to replace it. Will they probably eventually have to be replaced? Yeah, I would imagine so, but hopefully by that time the truck's natural lifespan is up and the fleet owner would be looking at, changing it out anyways at that point. So,
and also hopefully like battery technology is better. Folks maybe are more comfortable, or again, those smaller truckers that don't have the same resources might be able to. Yeah. Margot, thank you. Oops, you're still muted. Yeah, you might know that. Margot, you're muted.
And just going on and on. Sorry I was a little late today. I'll catch up later, but I really appreciate Pandora's and Eric's comments, and knowing what I've heard from our CSC over some issues. It would be, I just don't think they would go for sort of cleaner trucks. I think they really want to move towards as low as emissions as possible that we can get.
Yeah. And I think we just have to be, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't realize, sorry.
No, I didn't hear you.
I keep going. Sorry. I was starting to say something. And
I was done. I just didn't hear you.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yes. I think to your point, we just have to keep in mind, because you're totally right. And obviously we've all been in all the CSC meetings. We are just laying out, if we really want to target some small truckers, we have to be prepared that no one takes the incentive. And I think that's just what we're laying out right now, is that if that's the case, which is okay, right? We know there are big trucking companies that go in and out of the port that we want to get to the cleanest available. But at some point, if we offer incentives and the truckers don't take it, they are voluntary incentives. And so this was our way of saying, you know, and some of them, the feedback that we've heard at board meetings, that CARB's heard at board meetings is, you're putting me out of business. I can't take the incentive. So this was our way of trying to, like, you know, be equitable for those folks, recognizing that it's still a reduction. It's either a reduction because they're either operating their older truck, right, their old diesel, or it's helping them stay in business by not having them get rid of their truck and have to go out. So that was sort of our balance, just listening to you all and wanting to prioritize small truckers. Definitely not saying that there won't be small truckers that won't be eager. I think we could find that, and I hope we find that. We just wanted to sort of lay out other options to get as many of those smaller fleets that the CSC was really interested in targeting. So that's why we kind of laid out those as potentials.
Can I interject one more time? Sorry, this is Margot. Have we talked to the trucking industry to see if they would carry the loans? Might that be a possibility?
There are like financial institutions that are designed to, you know, provide funding and loans for those type of activities. I think what Janine was talking about earlier is a very real situation where, because of the cost of the trucks and the new technology, you know, there are real world impacts or real world requirements for taking on that. But you know, there are options for people out there, and through our programs, we've been able to work through dealerships to structure loans so that the incentives, when they are received, can be you know, used to immediately buy down the, you know, the balance, or a large portion of the balance of the loan. So there are things that we've been able to do over the years to help on the financing side. But ultimately, those financial institutions will have their requirements for how they, what they will need for loans and how those loans are structured. It's really kind of sounding to me as part of this conversation that we go back to your suggestion, Jess, of kind of doing immediate, you know, outreach, while also working on a project plan that could potentially, you know, address this need, and working through CARB to try and get that approved or address concerns that CARB might have, with the understanding that the priority is certainly lower emission trucks than just the 2010 standard.
So
Right.
in that case, we're really looking at essentially what is offered currently through HVIP, right? The incentive to purchase a new zero emission vehicle. I mean, that's offered in the state of California right now. Although I don't think the funding levels are quite high enough for a lot of the smaller fleets. So, you know, I mean, we could definitely look at what's existing out there and how this plan could potentially enhance that, maybe a similar structure, but higher incentive levels.
I think we'll have to look at how that could all fit together.
Yeah.
So if there's no objections, then what we're gonna do is, and we'll connect with you all, and I'd like to even just send out a quick note after this meeting to this group, to sort of summarize what we just discussed. But I think it sounds like, you know, based on our need to understand the need for the small truckers, and our need to understand the desire to participate even as is currently described, we need to do some immediate outreach. I think we've had some great concepts about outreach at our last meeting and tonight. So we'll definitely start with those paths. We'll update you on kind of the feedback that we get through that outreach, but really reserve half of the funding and our half of our efforts towards developing a project plan that might hit and at least enhance what we can do for the small truckers, and continue to work with you on what that means. So continue to work with you on what the truck types would be, but I think we're coalescing around kind of the cleanest available, and then also about what if maybe it's an increased funding amount, to Janine's point, to help maybe incentivize them further to get there. I think that could be a good way to do it. Any other sort of closing thoughts? I know there was a lot, and actually, honestly, I think these are really good concepts and lots of great discussion today. For those that joined a little bit after, I just want to let you know, we did talk at the top of the meeting about how our next meeting, in particular, because it really is timely. And I think by our next meeting, we can do a quick update on what our discussion was today, maybe just on where we're at. But really, we want to focus our next meeting on the truck reroute study that the port did. It's really important and was really closely related to the enforcement presentation we had last week. And kind of talk about what next steps we can do as a CSC to support potentially new truck routes or new signage or you know, what we can do with the funding there. We definitely figured since the study will have just wrapped up, it's perfect timing for this group. So just letting you know. Awesome. My final thing is, and we also said this right before you hopped on, Nate. Nate, in your new role, because you are no longer, or you've let us know you're no longer able to be the main host of, or you know, co-lead for this meeting. I'm wondering if we let everyone know anyone at this meeting can volunteer, or we're going to ask folks tomorrow if they'd like to volunteer. So just letting you know that that was sort of our next step in finding new leadership as you move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome. Thank you. And then with that, is there anyone on this call today that is willing or able to be kind of maybe present with the district tomorrow during the CSC meeting, a quick, not so quick, we're saving like 10 minutes. We want to do in-depth subcommittee updates tomorrow night, discussion about what we talked about today. Or is there anyone who would object to me just saying, maybe I'll have some prompting questions tomorrow night and just say, anyone at the, you know, truck subcommittee want to share? Maybe I'll do that as well. That way, if you feel like there's something I missed tomorrow night, I'm also happy to do that and kick it popcorn over to any one of you. So maybe I'll do that. Yeah, think about it a little bit and then raise your hand if you're like, oh, Jess forgot this one thing or didn't mention this one great thing. So, well, with that, I'll see hopefully all of you tomorrow night. Thank you.